Good morning, everyone. Welcome to DevPulseCon 2020, our first virtual conference. We are honored to host attendees from around the world this year. So I would like to personally welcome those of you who do not speak English as your primary language. So here goes. Please forgive me if I mispronounce things. Namaste, India. Assalamu alaikum to the Middle East, India, Singapore, and Malaysia. Welkom, Netherlands. Shalom, Israel. Halona karibu, Africa. Herzlich willkommen, Germany. Ni hao, China. Hola y buenos días, Mexico. And welcome to the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. And last but not the least, to my fellow North Americans from the USA and Canada, a very hearty and warm welcome. This is a very strange year, as you all know. We had to postpone our conference from the usual April timeline to October due to COVID. It has given us the time and the resources to bring together a fantastic lineup of keynote speakers, workshops on technical and product management topics, as well as panels on being the sole income earner and finding a path from engineering to product management. And to keep everyone from burning out from all the Zoom sessions and online meetings, we have streamlined 2-hour morning and afternoon sessions. All timings for our sessions for DevPulseCon are Pacific time. I wanted to take this opportunity to mention ThriveWise programs we provide to companies as separate standalone programs. We have our innovative Ally training for engineers and PMs, as well as our groundbreaking Safe Space program, which we are currently piloting at a prestigious Silicon Valley tech company in 2020 and 2021. Both of these new programs are in line with our mission to help improve workplace environments so that technical women can thrive in the workplace. So please do take a look at our programs on our website, thrive-wise.org. That is thrive-wise.org. And once again, welcome to DevPulseCon. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. So let me do a quick introduction for you, for our audience.
Now, do we still have 30 minutes, even though we're starting late?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Lori Harmon is a strategic global sales executive and general manager who consistently leads and transforms high-velocity sales teams to achieve revenue targets of up to $1 billion for organizations from startup to industry leaders. Lori is a problem solver with expertise in go-to-market strategies, as well as cybersecurity, AI, and the Internet of Things. Lori's ability to operate as a transformative leader comes from her deep experience leading global sales, professional services, customer support, product management, and marketing teams to help customers maximize their return. Lori holds a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems from Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. She started her career as a bricklayer. Please welcome Lori Harmon. Thank you for joining us. All right, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to be here. And as Rupa said, she did a great introduction, so thank you so much for that. This presentation is entitled The Audacity to Dream, because dreaming is so important for us, especially when it comes to our careers. And even when we have setbacks, we can get around them because the dream is much bigger than the setback. So since Rupa did a great introduction, I'm just going to leave you with 3 words about me, because she really covered everything spectacularly. First of all, I'm passionate. And she mentioned the fact that what I enjoy is setting up, building, and transforming virtual sales organizations that are high velocity. And more recently, I've added responsibility for customer success. And my passion is to make an impact on the company in terms of helping their growth prospects. But also, because I've been very fortunate in my career, I also like to make an impact today by paying things forward. And some of the ways I do that are, I did write a book called 42 Rules for Building a High Velocity Inside Sales Team. I am honored to be asked to be a keynote speaker, such as I am today, or a panelist. And I also share my expertise on social media and serve as a mentor to other women. And finally, I love adventure. Personally, I love adventure travel. But what you'll see in this presentation is I love adventure, or sometimes taking risks, in my professional career. And the first part of that risk Rupa told you about, which was my first job, was as a bricklayer. Now, why on earth would I do that? As a teenager growing up in North Carolina, it sounded interesting. The money was good, but it turns out that that was really a precursor for much of the rest of my career. I was obviously surrounded by male colleagues, and it was hard work. Now, you might be wondering, what does a bricklaying salesperson have in common with the technical audience? And the reality is, this is not about sales or marketing or operations or customer success or development or engineering. This is about the title of the presentation, which is your audacity to dream about whatever career that you want. So what I'd like to do is spend a few minutes talking about my career, not because I want to spend a lot of time talking about myself, but I think it'll give you some good examples of how I learned what I consider to be my 4 rules of career advancement. Now, are there only 4 rules? Of course not. There's a lot of things that you need to work on, but to me, these are some core things that, first of all, they apply to everybody, but in some cases, they may be more applicable to women because it may not be something that's natural for us. So I'm going to start with my story, and then we'll transition into those 4 rules, and I will save time for questions at the end. So after being a bricklayer, one of the things I think we might have in common, and Rupa mentioned my major, which is in information systems. So I imagine people here have had some fairly technical majors. And I decided that after taking a computer class in high school, so that's probably dating me in terms of my age, but I took the computer class and clearly determined that computers were really the future. And so my goal was to go to school, graduate with a computer-related degree, get a job at IBM, move my way up and become the CEO. I mean, talk about audacity. Now that's a really big dream. And the reason I wanted to do that where I was is that IBM was pretty well known in Charlotte, North Carolina. And certainly the people that worked there, they lived on a really nice side of town. So it seemed like a good approach. And I also knew that IBM stood for I've been moved too. So it may have been a ticket for me to get out of North Carolina. And essentially that's what happened. I went to school. I ended up doing an internship for IBM in Charlotte. And then I met all these people who came from other colleges in other states. I thought, wow, this is my ticket out. So I did a back-to-back internship. And the second one was at Santa Teresa Labs in California. And man, California, whoa, was such a different place than North Carolina. I loved the weather and I loved everything about it. But right at the end of that internship, my manager said to me, Laura, you've done a good job, but we really think you'd be better in our sales department. Imagine the terror. Sales. Oh my gosh, I never thought of sales. I had my whole life planned already. I was going to work for IBM. I was going to write code. I was going to move up. And now they're telling me, well, we really think you'd be better in sales. So I did talk to the sales department. I did get an offer and I went to work as a systems engineer at IBM. So I got out of North Carolina. I went to work for IBM, which was my goal. And it turns out that I didn't realize it then, but that was really my first pivot into something different, a job that I really knew nothing about and had to figure out. So as I was in California for a couple of years, I started meeting a lot of people in what they called Silicon Valley. Of course, when you grow up in North Carolina, you don't necessarily hear about these places. And so I found that people there were moving faster. They were learning more. And so I decided to make a few changes. And eventually I ended up at this company called Network General. And I was there for quite some time, moved up as a product manager. I'd already made yet another shift in my career. And one day, the executive vice president of sales came to me and he said, you know, my director of professional services is leaving. I'd like you to run that organization. But I was like, I know nothing about professional services. And he said, it doesn't matter. You're smart. You'll figure it out. And I believe in you. And if you need help, you can call me. And oh, by the way, it's going to give you P&L experience. So I still have in my head that I want to be this CEO of something, right? So, okay, more breadth, sales, product management, professional services. It's a good opportunity. So I do that. And within the first year, we grow revenue 85% and increase profits by 20%. So remember, revenue and profits, because I'm going to talk about that later as part of my 4 rules. But after doing that for 2 years, it was in fact so successful that they wanted to spin it off into its own business unit. But they wanted to bring in a gray hair, and this was a term back then. You probably know what that means, to run it. So although I had built it, I wasn't being asked to actually run it for the long term. The theory was that I would report to this person, learn more about the business, and maybe one day run the business unit myself. So I was back talking to that same EVP, who was a great mentor for me, by the way. For some reason, he took me under his wing and helped me through my career. And he said, Lori, I want to start an inside sales organization. And I have a list of a few people I think would be good to do this. Do you know anybody I should put on that list? Oh, I said, well, me, of course. I should do that. I knew nothing about that. In fact, at the time, inside sales wasn't a thing. It was really in its infancy. And he said to me, he goes, but you know nothing about that. And I said, hey, remember, you believe in me. I went over and did this professional services thing for you. I'll figure it out. 2 weeks later, I had a new job running inside sales. Network General got acquired. I left. Fast forward, had a few children. And eventually I went to VeriSign, another company that provided a lot of great opportunity, and I was there for quite a while. So at VeriSign, I had to go there. I actually had to go from being a VP down to being a director because of taking time off, and also because there was an industry downturn before that. So I went there as the director of sales operations, and I really wanted to get their inside sales job, but they gave it to somebody internally. So 2 days into that job, I said to my manager, hey, you know, if you ever need somebody to do both sales operations and inside sales, I could do that for you. 6 months later, I got promoted to a VP, and I was running global sales operations and inside sales. A couple years later, VeriSign restructured, and they asked me to run global customer support. Again, knew nothing about it, took the job. I'm still getting the breadth to ultimately become a CEO. And one of the things that I really liked about VeriSign was that they had general managers. So that's like a mini CEO. You're running your own company within a company. So I said to my manager, oh, hey, I want to do this general manager job. And I see a path to doing that. There was somebody who was running 2 business units, which didn't make sense to me. I thought, oh, I can run one of those. So she said, well, talk to my manager, who I'd happened to know because I'd run a special project with them, had the conversation, and 2 weeks later, I was a general manager. So they sold that off to Melbourne IT, and I did that for a while. And then I realized, you know, I don't know if I really want to run all these departments. Maybe this CEO thing isn't as cracked up as it is, at least for me. I really, really enjoy being in sales. So I recommended to them that they actually move the job to Australia and lay me off. And they did. So I spent some time consulting, had the opportunity to write my book. And since then, I've been doing sales jobs, and I recently was asked to expand into customer success at NetApp. And one more thing along the way is then I started thinking about, well, what do I do after corporate life? Some people become university instructors. Some people move on to boards. Some people actually retire. But I know myself, I can't actually stop working. I just love the stimulation and the mental challenges. So I thought, I want to get on corporate boards. So again, another thing that takes a couple of years to do. So I set my sights, my dreams on getting on a corporate board. And I'm happy to say that a year later, I was recently selected to join SiteLock. So what I want to move to now is sharing with you these key rules that I learned through the career path that I just described to you. But first, I want to make sure that we're in the right mindset. So I'd like to share with you a quote by a philosopher named Ayn Rand. And this is one of my favorite quotes. And I know that all of you can read, but I just love hearing this. The question isn't who's going to let me, it's who's going to stop me. So often we sit around and wait. We wait for that promotion. We wait for somebody to notice us and think, oh, this person would be good doing this other thing, or be good doing something more senior, or taking on this special project. And one of the key learnings that I have is that you can't wait for other people to figure it out. It's not that they don't want to. Often what happens is people see you in your current job and they need you, right? You're really good at what you do. So they need you to be there. So they're not really looking to get, quote unquote, get rid of you and have you do something else, or move you to a different department, or maybe move you up into a more senior position. Or maybe they have other priorities. They have other things in their mind. So don't wait. Think about who's going to stop you versus waiting around for who's going to let you. So now let's get into my 4 rules for career advancement. Number 1, know the language of business. And this has 2 parts. First of all, words matter. How you say the words and the exact words that you select. What I find often happens is that, and especially for women, we use weak words. I feel, I think, I'll try, it seems, it appears. You have to be strong. You have to understand the power of language and how to communicate that. I'm going to do this. I will deliver, not I'm going to try. These are key differences when you're communicating with other people in your organization. And the other thing I find, and this is part of the first one, is we constantly apologize. Why are we apologizing? Sometimes we're apologizing for things that aren't our fault, or things that actually don't require an apology. So stop apologizing. If you really need to apologize because it really requires an apology, fine. But otherwise, I constantly hear people going, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. But I have to tell you, men just don't do that. The second part of this is, what is the language that is used by, say, your manager or your manager's manager, your CEO or your CFO to talk about the business? And the reason I asked you earlier to remember the words revenue and profit, or those are 2 key terms that are really important for a company. Obviously, revenue, profit, customer satisfaction, net renewal rate, churn, profitability, velocity, all of those things are really, really important at the executive level. So make sure you understand those terms, understand what they mean, and at least have the knowledge and the ability to understand key financial statements. And that way, when you're talking about what you're doing, you can link that to what's happening in the business. Which brings me to rule number 2. Deliver results and outcomes. Now, some people might be saying, well, aren't those the same thing? Results, outcomes? Well, they're not. And let me give you an example. A result would be checking your code in on time, or releasing an application on time. delivering a new feature on time. In sales, it could be booking your number, making your number, which could be a booking or what we call in cloud annual recurring revenue. Those are the results, but the outcomes are different. The outcome of shipping a new application could be that it generated another $100 million for your business or your company. The outcome of that new feature could be that you increase customer satisfaction by 2 points. So when you're talking about your accomplishments and you're sharing those with other leaders in your company or your manager, make sure that you're not just talking about results, but you're associating those with the outcomes for your company. And that's why number one is so important. If you don't have the language down and no, you don't know the terminology, it's very difficult to do rule number 2. Let's move on to number 3. Be fearless. I actually have a necklace. I'm not wearing it right now, but I have a necklace that says fearless, just to remind me to be fearless. And I hope that you saw in the story that I told you that, I was fearless. If somebody asked me to take on a new role that I knew nothing about, if it's something you want to do, if it's something that's going to advance your career, take it. You will figure it out. There's plenty of resources. The person who offers that to you is not going to let you, drown or flounder. They're going to help you. There's professional organizations that do similar things. There's books you can read. There are so many ways to learn something new. So you can see professional services, inside sales, global customer support, general management, customer success. I knew nothing about any of those things before I started doing them, but I figured it out, and you can too. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to apply for a job where you only have 20% of the qualifications. That's another thing that often happens. In fact, there's a statistic about it that says most of the time women apply for jobs where they're 80% qualified and men apply for jobs where they're only 20% qualified. So apply for that job. If that's something you want to do, go for it. And even if you don't get it, it's okay. You'll learn something through that process that'll help you in the future. And when things don't go your way, so for example, the situation where they brought in a gray hair in professional services, so that put up a barrier for me, right? I couldn't move up to be a VP of professional services. So I went around it. I moved over to inside sales as a director, and then I was able to move up to a VP. So don't be afraid. If the barrier's put up, maybe there's a reason. Maybe there's something better out there. If you get laid off, maybe there's something better out there. I've always landed on my feet. So don't be afraid to go through and make changes, or even change your dream. You might learn something like I did that says, maybe I don't really want that dream anymore, and I'm going to have a different dream. All of that's just fine. Just don't be afraid to do it. And finally, rule number 4, ask for what you want. This is key, and it relates back to what I said about the quote earlier. Don't wait for people to figure it out. For example, when I got into the director of inside sales position that I talked about, I wanted to be a VP. So I went to my manager. I'm like, well, what do you have to do? What are the requirements to be a vice president at this company? And what they told me was, you have to be responsible for 50 million in revenue. Well, guess what? My inside sales team went from 0 to 50 million in 2 years because I wanted to get that promotion. But every company has characteristics or, basically levels, and you have to have a certain level of responsibility. You have to be able to demonstrate certain skills to get to that next level. But if you don't go and ask what those are, you could be waiting around forever to get there because you don't know, and you may not be focused on the right areas. So ask what it takes to get the promotion. Ask what it takes to maybe get a higher raise. When you're negotiating for a new job, make sure you ask for the money you want. Don't, know what the industry rates are. Don't be crazy and ask for double what the industry pays, but ask for what you want, or come up with creative ways around. If they can't pay you the exact compensation and salary, ask for other benefits. So always ask for what you want, because otherwise, people don't know, and you're certainly not likely to get it if you don't ask for it. So really, really key to make sure you're asking for what you want. Earlier, I talked about resources in terms of learning new things. So I wanted to share with you as a takeaway 3 key books that I've read. And there's classes you can take. As I said, there's professional organizations, but sometimes if you just want to go fast and figure things out, you don't want to wait around for the class to come up or for the next meeting of a professional organization and networking with those people to find out. You just want to take control and go find out on your own. And there's, of course, tons of stuff on the internet, but these are 3 books that I found to be really helpful to me, especially for rule number 1 and number 2, the power of language. So how to say it for women, and learning about the language of business, which is actually the one on the my left, No Ceilings and No Walls. Really great resources for you to leverage to help you along and, help you develop your dream, help you achieve your dream, and just learn more about what it takes to be successful. So that's what I have today. What I really want to do is open it up for your questions, because I love to get questions.
Thank you so much, Lori. This was awesome. I still can't get over the fact that you started as a bricklayer. Just we have one question from the audience.
Great.
The question is, we hear that as you go up the ladder, the business politics are intense and especially hard for women. What has been your experience? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, hey, every company, even startups that I've been at, every company has politics. So first of all, you just have to accept that. It just happens. But for me, what I found that works, I'm a pretty transparent and direct person. And, I think that's really important, to just maintain who you are and be transparent and direct. And yes, there's going to be politics, and it could be harder for women. It really depends on who you're dealing with. But I think you just have to stick to yourself and be true to that. And if you're in a situation where it's just completely untenable, you may have to change your situation. It may be time to move on to a different company or move on to a different group within your company, but there's always going to be politics. And yes, you have to figure out how to navigate those, but try to build up relationships with other people with your transparency and honesty. And I think that's really the best thing you can do. At the end of the day, if somebody, I guess, really doesn't like you and wants to play those political games, then there's not a lot you can do about that. And I would say my final thing, and it's more personal, is that, I'm a believer in karma. So what comes around goes around, and, you figure out maybe that's not the environment for you. But if you're getting backstabbed and things, just remember that ultimately that person will also get whatever they're due.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask a question, and I think we have time for just this one. Regarding building relationships, for some people, especially on the technical ladder, this is a very difficult skill, for most engineers at least, to learn. Can you give us some tips of what you do to build relationships with people around you, above you? That would be great.
Absolutely. Well, so I have to say something. One of the reasons they told me that I should go into sales was that they told me I was too social. And maybe that's different, because you're saying maybe technical people are less social, but I find that hilarious, because every time I do one of those personality tests, I come out as an introvert. So even though I might appear social, I'm probably technically not social. So that's a perfect question for me. So what I do is I ask a lot of open-ended questions. I find it's really important to get other people talking, get them talking not just about their job, but find out about them as a person. And if you're asking open-ended questions and you're listening to them, they're going to feel like, and I think you're valuing that person. And ideally, they'll reciprocate and they'll ask you questions back and get to know you. That may or may not happen. But I think if you get to know someone else, then the next time you see them, you can ask, oh, how's your, I don't know, say they told you that their child was going to go away to college. Oh, so how's your child that went away to college? You can remember those things and follow up, and they'll be like, hey, they listened to what I said. They remembered me. They care about me. And that makes it much better and easier to build relationships. So that's what I do.
Awesome. That's a great idea. I'm gonna take that too. Uh,
Excellent.
that's all the time we have, unfortunately, for the questions because we started a little bit late. But thank you so much. It was an excellent talk. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your background with all of us.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And if anybody wants more conversation, connect with me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.